All right, so picture this. Your dream job. It involves shipping, like a super luxe velvet sofa from, say, Milan, right? From like a fancy designer straight to a penthouse in Dubai. Or maybe it's more about getting those incredible hand-woven rugs, kind of from India to a boutique in New York. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, that's the world of an import-export manager, specifically in furniture, carpets, and all that cool lighting stuff. And today we're going deep, deep, deep into this world with some help from RoleCatcher.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? When you think furniture or rugs, you don't automatically think global trade,
Yep.
but it really is a wild example of how connected everything is globally, I mean.
Yeah, there's way more to it than just what you see on the surface. So let's break it down. If you're an import-export manager, what are you actually doing all day? What's the job about?
Think of it less about like actually unpacking boxes and more like you're designing the journey. Like you're the architect, but for a product.
Yeah.
You create the whole plan for how it gets from, wherever it's made to someone's living room across continents.
So you're like a logistical mastermind, making sure everything goes smoothly, but on like a global scale.
Totally. It's a lot of coordinating teams, but they're in different countries.
Yeah.
And then there's all the custom stuff, the rules, the laws about international trade. Details, details, details.
I saw something about technology being a part of this too. I don't know, blockchain for a vintage chandelier. It feels like a weird fit.
Right. It does sound strange.
Yeah.
But actually, more and more companies are using it to track these high-end items, especially if they're handmade. Think about it. You buy that rug you mentioned, and you can literally trace its whole journey. Who made it? Where? When? It makes sure everything's ethical, fair the whole way through. Blockchain makes that transparency possible.
Wow. That's really something. So it's not just about getting a product from A to B, it's knowing, improving its whole backstory.
Exactly. And that's just one thing. AI is getting involved too. Predicting what people want to buy, figuring out the absolute best shipping routes. It's high tech for sure.
It sounds like this job needs someone creative and analytical. Organized, but able to roll with the punches. You need to be all about the details, but also see those big global trends. So what's it like day to day? Where are you working?
You're spot on. It's a total blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an office, but the work's not your typical office gig. You're not just stuck in spreadsheets. You're thinking about global markets, what people want around the world, even how culture impacts design choices.
It's like this crash course in like international business and culture, but you're also making sure a one-of-a-kind glass sculpture arrives in one piece.
Totally. And don't forget the travel. There are industry events, factory visits. Maybe you even go pick out stuff for a special client yourself.
Okay, yeah, now that sounds super glamorous, but there's got to be a catch, right? What are the tough parts of this job?
Oh, for sure. Travel is great, but the hours can be long and kind of unpredictable. Time zones,
Yeah.
and if you're working with teams all over the world, you're always kind of on. So you really need to be flexible, a really good communicator. Absolutely. And it's a specialized field, so it's competitive. You really got to keep learning about new laws, new tech, what's hot in the market.
So it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But for the right person, someone who wants that global perspective, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But how do you even get started? It seems pretty specialized.
Right. Well, RoleCatcher really stresses that early hands-on experience is key. Even if it's not, super glamorous at first, like maybe an internship in an import-export department or an entry-level position, import-export coordinator, something like that. It's about getting your foot in the door.
You don't need to be like an expert in international trade law right out of college.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's way more about learning by doing. At first, you'd be helping with the paperwork, coordinating shipments, probably doing a ton of research on all those regulations and trends we talked about. It's like boot camp for global trade.
You get a taste of everything. And then I'm guessing as you get experience, you can take on more and maybe even like specialize in something you find really interesting.
Exactly. Maybe you get super into customs compliance, like you're the tariff master.
Yeah.
Or who knows, maybe you love the sourcing part, traveling around, finding those unique pieces.
You're like a global treasure hunter, but for furniture and design.
Huh. I like that. But yeah, you might become an import-export specialist, where you're more independent. You'd be making the strategies, building those relationships with suppliers overseas, getting really good at negotiating.
I bet that's where understanding those cultural differences is super important. Not just knowing the rules, but like how to actually work with people.
100%.
Yeah.
Knowing how to talk to people from different cultures, what their business style is like, even their sense of design. That's how you build those long-term relationships, and it's so important.
It's like you need to be a diplomat and a logistics expert.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Yeah.
each step up, you get more responsibility, but also, the rewards get bigger. You could end up running a whole team. Senior import-export coordinator, overseeing everything for a company.
That sounds stressful. Making sure everything's running on time, following all the rules, dealing with whatever crazy stuff happens in global shipping.
It takes a certain kind of person, someone who can think strategically, solve problems quickly, be decisive even under pressure. But when it works, it's super rewarding. Like
Hmm.
you're the one making that whole flow of goods happen across borders.
And then there's the ultimate goal. You become the import-export manager.
Right. That's where all that experience leads. At that point, you're not just managing day to day, you're setting the entire import-export strategy for the company. What markets are we going after? What are the new opportunities? And you always have to be adapting because global trade, it never sits still.
It's a lot of influence shaping how a company works internationally, but RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it either. They make it clear it's demanding.
Totally. They're upfront about the long hours and having to constantly be in learning mode because the rules change, the markets change. But they also talk about how satisfying it is to succeed in such a fast-paced field.
That feeling of, I did that. You're at the cutting edge of this global industry, making huge decisions, bringing these beautiful, unique things to people all over.
And of course, you get paid well for it. This kind of expertise, it's in high demand.
So for someone listening who's thinking, this is me, this is my thing, what advice does RoleCatcher have for taking that first step?
They're big on never stopping learning. Even if you're already experienced, the world of international trade just keeps changing. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's not enough to just know your stuff. You got to keep learning new stuff.
Exactly. They say to look for professional development opportunities, things like certifications, conferences, even just connecting with other people in the industry.
Yeah, build that network. Share what you know. Learn from everyone else. That's huge in a field like this.
100%. And speaking of resources, their platform itself, RoleCatcher, it's like a gold mine for this.
Mm.
Career guides, interview prep. They even have AI tools to help you fix up your resume, practice for interviews.
It's like having a career coach and a global trade expert all in one.
Totally.
Before we move on to the actual skills you need, I'm just curious. When you were researching this, what surprised you the most? Anything unexpected about import-export in this industry?
Honestly,
Yeah.
the sheer variety of stuff you can get into. You could be dealing with like Italian marble countertops one day, and then it's antique textiles from Morocco the next. You're always learning about new cultures, new products. That's what really struck me.
Never a dull moment, that's for sure. Which leads us perfectly into the skills themselves. What does RoleCatcher say are the must-haves to be good at this job?
They talk a lot about strong monitoring skills, but it's not just about staring at spreadsheets. It's more like you're constantly checking in on how you're doing. Are there ways to be more efficient? How can you spot problems before they happen?
Being proactive, always thinking ahead.
Yeah, exactly. There are just so many moving parts, right? You've got
Yes.
suppliers, shipping companies, customs,
Yeah.
and everything has to work together. That's why critical thinking is so important. You have to be able to process information fast, see potential issues, and make good decisions under pressure.
Thinking on your feet,
Exactly. And then there's communication, which is huge.
especially with different languages and cultures.
It's not just about speaking clearly, but writing clearly too. And listening, really listening to your international partners. What do they need? Where are they coming from?
So you're building trust, not just trying to get your way.
Right. And because everything's usually on a tight schedule and kind of complicated, you have to be amazing at managing your time. Being organized is key. Knowing what to prioritize. And you're juggling a lot at once.
Like a conductor, making sure the whole orchestra is in sync.
Love that. And of course, we can't forget about negotiation. Getting a good price from a supplier, dealing with a shipping delay, those final contracts with a buyer. You've got to be able to negotiate.
Finding those win-win situations, even when it's tough.
Yes. And that all ties back to really knowing the industry.
Knowing your stuff. And I don't just mean knowing the difference between furniture styles.
Right. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
You need to understand the materials, how things are made, what the new trends are, even the cultural significance of what you're dealing with.
It's like you need to speak the language of the industry fluently.
Exactly. And when you put all that together, the monitoring, the critical thinking, communication, time management, negotiation, the industry knowledge, That's what makes a successful import-export manager.
It's a lot, but wow, it sounds incredibly rewarding, especially for people who are drawn to the global market and how it all works. So you learn all these skills, become this import-export whiz. What's next? Are there different paths you can take?
Oh, totally. RoleCatcher talks about this. Finding your niche. Like you become the expert in some specific thing.
So instead of just doing it all, you're like the go-to person for importing, I don't know, really specific textiles from a certain place only.
Right. Or maybe you're all about the logistics. Like how do you get this crazy fragile shipment of antique mirrors from some tiny Parisian market to a gallery opening in New York? And it has to be perfect and on time. You figure that out.
See, that's what I love about this. It's global, yeah, but you can really get into the details you find interesting.
Exactly. You find that sweet spot.
Hmm.
What you're good at, what you love, and what the world needs.
And speaking of what the world needs, we talked about sustainability, ethical sourcing, all that. Does that change this job?
Big time.
Yeah,
I mean, consumers are way more aware now,
that's
right?
sure.
Like, where's my furniture from? What's it made of? Were the factory conditions good?
Hmm.
People want to know. And they'll pay more if it means it's ethical.
It's true.
And that's where a good import-export manager is so valuable.
Hmm.
They can find those ethically made products, work with the right suppliers, and they know how to deal with all the certifications and stuff, which can be complicated.
It's more than just finding the prettiest thing or the cheapest thing now. You got to know the whole story behind it.
Exactly. And you got to be able to explain all that to peer customers because they're asking.
So this job's changing right along with what people care about.
Absolutely. And for someone who really believes in that stuff, sustainability, ethical practices, it adds a whole other level to the work.
It's like you're not just selling stuff, you're making the world a little bit better. One beautiful chair, one rug at a time.
I like that.
I think we've shown that this career, it's kind of hidden. Most people don't think about it, but it's part of so much of what we buy and use.
Way more to it than meets the eye.
From all those rules and regulations to making deals across the world, using high tech, supporting ethical companies, import-export management is always changing.
And if you're the kind of person who thrives on that, who loves the global aspect, it's full of opportunity.
So if any of this has sparked your interest, if you're thinking, wait, maybe this is me.
Check out RoleCatcher. Seriously, they have so much info to help you figure it out.
Yeah, they've got your back, all the guides, the prep stuff, everything.
Don't just dream about that amazing rug or that chandelier. Take a chance. See what's out there. You never know.
The world of import-export, it's waiting. That's all for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating career to explore. Until then, keep those questions coming.